Picture this. You're 65 years old, your back hurts, your knees hurt, and your boss just scheduled a Monday morning meeting you absolutely do not want to attend. You open your retirement account, and the number staring back at you isn't freedom, it's panic. It's the realization that you have maybe 3, maybe 4 years of living expenses saved up after 40 years of working. And the worst part? You saw this coming. You just kept thinking you'd figure it out later. Later never came. Here's what nobody tells you when you're young and invincible. Retirement isn't something that just happens when you get old enough. It's something you either build deliberately or you don't get at all. And right now, the math says most people aren't building it. Most people are one medical bill, one layoff, one unexpected expense away from financial disaster at every single decade of their life. And by the time they realize the hole is too deep to climb out of, they're 58 years old with $40,000 saved and absolutely no plan. That's not a scare tactic. That's Tuesday for millions of people. My name is Sachi, and I've spent way too much time doing math that most people actively avoid. If you've ever wondered whether you're actually on track to retire or whether you're quietly falling behind while convincing yourself everything is fine, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you think about your future. Now, before we get into the numbers that will probably make you uncomfortable, let me ask you something. When you think about retirement, what does that actually look like in your head? Maybe you picture a beach somewhere. Maybe it's just not having an alarm clock. Maybe it's being able to spend time with your kids or grandkids without checking your phone every 5 minutes for work emails. Maybe it's just waking up on a Monday morning and feeling nothing. No dread, no obligation, just peace. Whatever that picture looks like, here's the question nobody asks out loud. How much does that picture actually cost? Because retirement isn't a finish line you cross when you hit a certain age. It's a number you hit. A specific, calculated, non-negotiable number, and most people have absolutely no idea what that number is, which means they have no idea how far away they actually are from it, and not knowing the distance is exactly how you end up shocked at 65. Here's where the math starts getting uncomfortable. The standard rule most financial planners use is called the 4% rule. The idea is simple. If you can live off 4% of your retirement savings per year, your money should last 30 years without running out. So if you need $50,000 a year to live, you need $1,250,000 saved before you retire. If you need $60,000 a year, you need $1,500,000. If you need $80,000 a year, you're looking at $2 million. Read those numbers again. Slowly. Now here's what the average person actually has saved. According to recent data, the median retirement savings for Americans in their 50s, the decade right before most people plan to retire, is around $87,000. Not $870,000, $87,000. That is not a misprint. That is the middle of the pack for people who are supposed to be in the home stretch of their working lives. At a 4% withdrawal rate, $87,000 generates about $3,480 per year. That's $290 a month. You cannot retire on $290 a month. You can barely cover a phone bill and a halfway decent grocery run. And yet, that is the median. That means half the people approaching retirement age have even less than that. And here's the part that will genuinely blow your mind. That $87,000 median includes people who have been working and theoretically saving for 30 years, 3 decades of paychecks, 3 decades of employer matches, 3 decades of compound interest sitting there waiting to work for them, and the middle result after all of that is $87,000. So what happened? Where did 30 years of income go? The answer is that most people were never really saving, they were surviving. And those two things look identical from the outside but lead to completely different destinations. This is the part of the retirement conversation that nobody wants to have because it forces people to look at their own behavior instead of blaming the economy or the government or their employer. And look, the system is not designed to help you retire comfortably. That's real. But the harder truth is that most people spend every raise they ever got, every bonus, every tax refund, Every unexpected windfall got absorbed into a slightly more expensive lifestyle without anyone sitting down and making a conscious decision about it. The car got nicer, the apartment got bigger, the vacations got fancier, the subscriptions multiplied, and the retirement account stayed roughly the same because there was always something more immediate and more exciting to spend money on. Psychologists call this lifestyle inflation, and it is the single most effective and most invisible retirement killer in existence. It doesn't feel dangerous because it happens slowly, gradually, almost pleasantly. You get a $5,000 raise and you upgrade your car payment by $200 a month. That feels reasonable. You get promoted and suddenly you're eating out 4 times a week instead of 2. That feels like a reward you earned. Nobody sits down and consciously decides to sacrifice their retirement. They just make 100 individually reasonable-sounding decisions that collectively add up to the same catastrophic result. Think about it this way. If you got a $5,000 raise every year for 20 years and invested even half of each raise instead of spending it, you'd have an additional $500,000 in retirement savings at an 8% annual return. But if you spent every raise, which is what most people do, you'd have a nicer car, a bigger streaming package, a slightly more comfortable lifestyle, and almost nothing else to show for 2 decades of income growth. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between retiring at 62 and working until your body gives out. But here's where it gets really interesting. Lifestyle inflation is only part of the problem. The other part is something most people don't even realize is happening to them. It's called the retirement math gap. And it's why even people who think they're saving enough are often dangerously behind without knowing it. Here's how it works. Most people who do save for retirement think in terms of monthly contributions, not end results. They sign up for their 401k, contribute 3% or 4% of their salary, get the employer match, and feel responsible. And they are being responsible, relatively speaking. The problem is that 3% or 4% is nowhere near enough to build the kind of retirement fund that actually supports a comfortable life. Let's run the real numbers on a realistic scenario. Say you're 30 years old, making $60,000 a year, and contributing 5% to your 401k with a 3% employer match. That's $4,800 per year from you and $1,800 from your employer, so $6,600 total going into your retirement account annually. At an 8% average annual return over 35 years, you'd retire at 65 with approximately $1,100,000. That sounds great until you remember that $1,100,000 in 35 years is not the same as $1,100,000 today. Inflation, historically running around 3% per year, will erode that purchasing power significantly. In today's dollars, that $1,100,000 is worth closer to $400,000 in real terms, and at a 4% withdrawal rate, that's $16,000 a year to live on. $16,000 a year, that's $1,333 a month, before taxes, for the rest of your life. Social Security helps, sure, but the average Social Security benefit right now is around $1,700 a month. So you're looking at roughly $3,000 a month total, or about $36,000 a year, to cover housing, food, healthcare, transportation, and everything else life throws at you in your final decades. In a world where the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in most cities already exceeds $1,500 a month. In a world where healthcare costs keep rising faster than inflation every single year, and speaking of healthcare, this is the number that most people never factor in until it's too late. The average retired couple will spend over $300,000 in out-of-pocket healthcare costs during retirement. Not covered by insurance, not covered by Medicare, out of pocket. That number doesn't care how carefully you budgeted for groceries in your 40s. It doesn't care how many times you packed lunch instead of eating out. It just sits there, waiting, growing, and it will arrive whether you plan for it or not. Now you might be thinking that people figure this out as they get older and start saving more aggressively to catch up. And this is where the math becomes genuinely brutal. Because of how compound interest works, the years you save in your 20s and early 30s are worth dramatically more than the years you save in your 50s. Not a little more. not marginally more, dramatically, almost unfairly more. Here's the number that changes everything. $1 invested at age 25 at an 8% annual return becomes $21.72 by age 65. That same dollar invested at age 45 becomes only $4.66. Same dollar, same return rate, same investment, just 20 years later, and it's worth less than a quarter of what it would have been. This is why starting late is not just inconvenient, it is mathematically devastating in a way that almost nothing else in personal finance is. Someone who saves $500 a month from age 25 to 35 and then stops completely will end up with more money at 65 than someone who saves $500 a month from age 35 all the way to 65. 10 years of early saving beats 30 years of late saving. That's not motivational poster math. That's compound interest being completely merciless to anyone who procrastinates. And most people procrastinate. They wait until they feel financially stable enough to start saving seriously. They wait until the kids are a little older. They wait until the car is paid off. They wait until next year when things will definitely be less complicated. And every single year they wait, the math gets harder, the gap gets wider, and the mountain gets steeper. But here's something that most retirement articles completely skip over, and it might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. The retirement crisis in this country is not just a math problem, it is a psychology problem. And until you understand the psychology, the math doesn't actually help you change your behavior. Here's what I mean. Most people already know they should be saving more for retirement. They've heard the advice 1,000 times. Start early, invest consistently, don't touch it. Max out your 401k. Get the employer match. They know this. They have known this for years. And yet the savings data tells us clearly that they are not doing it. So the question is not what to do. Everyone knows what to do. The question is, why aren't people doing what they already know they should? The answer has everything to do with how the human brain handles time. Psychologists call it hyperbolic discounting, which is a complicated way of saying that your brain treats future rewards as significantly less valuable than present ones, even when the math says the future reward is obviously dramatically better. Retirement is the ultimate future reward. It is decades away. It is abstract. It does not feel real in the same way that a weekend trip or a new phone or a really good dinner out feels real right now in your hands. So when your brain is forced to choose between contributing an extra $300 to your retirement account this month or spending that $300 on something enjoyable right now, the enjoyable thing wins almost every time. Not because you are irresponsible, not because you don't care about your future, but because your brain is literally wired through millions of years of evolution to prioritize the present over the future. Your ancestors who grabbed food when it was available survived. The ones who saved it for later often didn't. That instinct is still running in your brain every single day. The people who successfully build retirement savings aren't necessarily smarter or more disciplined than everyone else. They've just found ways to remove the decision from their present self entirely. Automatic contributions that come out of their paycheck before they ever see the money. Automatic increases set up in advance every time they get a raise. Systems and structures that make saving the default behavior instead of an active choice they have to make repeatedly. Because here is the brutal truth about willpower in financial decisions. Willpower runs out. Every single day you make hundreds of small decisions, and by the time you're sitting on the couch at 9 p.m., deciding whether to log into your brokerage account and increase your contribution, your decision-making capacity is nearly empty. You're going to choose the path of least resistance every time. The only savings that reliably happen over decades are the ones you set up when you're thinking clearly in a calm and rational moment, and then never have to think about again. This is why the people who retire comfortably are almost never the ones with the highest salaries. They are almost always the ones who automated the right behaviors early and then had the discipline to stay out of their own way. But let's talk about the other side of this equation, because retirement isn't just about how much you save. It is also about how much you spend. And this is where most people have a hidden problem they've never actually sat down and calculated honestly. Most people have no real idea what their actual monthly expenses are. They have a general sense. They know the rent or the mortgage. They know the car payment. But the complete picture, including subscriptions they forgot they signed up for, dining out twice a week that adds up fast, impulse purchases that feel small individually, lifestyle creep across every single category of spending, is a mystery. And you cannot build a retirement plan around a mystery. Here is a simple but genuinely uncomfortable exercise. Add up every dollar you spent last month. Not what you budgeted, not what you planned. What you actually spent, down to the last dollar. Most people who do this for the first time are genuinely shocked by the number. And that number, that real, honest, unfiltered number, is what your retirement has to replace. Not some idealized, stripped-down version of your life you assume you'll be happy with when you're older. Your actual current lifestyle, adjusted for inflation, potentially for 25 to 30 years. Because people consistently underestimate how long they will live and overestimate how dramatically their expenses will drop in retirement. Yes, you won't have commuting costs, you won't be buying work clothes, but you will have more time, and more time reliably means more spending on travel, hobbies, healthcare, experiences, and helping your family. Retirement is frequently more expensive than people expect, not less. Now here's where most people mess this up, and I see this pattern constantly. They hit their late 40s or early 50s, do a rough calculation, realize they are significantly behind, and panic straight into bad decisions. They shift their portfolio into high-risk investments trying to catch up on returns. They pull money out of retirement accounts early and pay the penalties and taxes that can destroy years of compounding in a single transaction. They tell themselves they'll just work a few more years, as if their health, their employer, and the job market will all cooperate with that plan indefinitely. None of these are strategies. They are reactions. And reacting to a retirement crisis in your 50s is like trying to steer a ship after you've already hit the iceberg. You might survive, but it's going to get messy. Here's something else nobody talks about. The psychological cost of not being on track for retirement doesn't just affect you at 65, it affects you right now. The background anxiety of knowing you're behind, even if you never look at the numbers directly, creates a low-level financial stress that bleeds into everything. Your sleep, your relationships, your willingness to take career risks that could actually improve your situation. Financial insecurity in the present is exhausting in a way that is very hard to measure but impossible to ignore once you recognize it. And here's the deeply unfair part. The stress of financial insecurity actually makes it harder to make good financial decisions. Research consistently shows that people under financial stress make worse choices with money, not better ones. They are more likely to choose immediate rewards, more likely to avoid thinking about long-term planning because it feels overwhelming, more likely to make impulsive purchases as a form of emotional relief. The very thing that would help them most, calm and deliberate long-term planning, is the thing their stressed brain is least equipped to do. It's a trap that feeds itself, and the only way out is to interrupt the cycle deliberately, even when everything in you wants to ignore it for one more year. So let's talk about what actually works, because this video is not meant to leave you paralyzed. The math is terrifying, yes, but terrifying and impossible are two completely different things. The single most powerful move you can make right now, regardless of your age, is to find out exactly where you stand. Not a rough guess, not a feeling, the actual number. Log into your retirement accounts today, add up every dollar, then use a basic compound interest calculator to project what that amount grows to by your target retirement age at a conservative 7% return. Then calculate what you need using the 4% rule based on your actual spending. The gap between those two numbers is your mission. It might be uncomfortable, it will probably be larger than you hoped. But knowing the real number is the only thing that turns a vague anxiety into a specific plan. Then automate. Whatever percentage you're currently contributing, increase it by 1%, just 1%. Set it to increase automatically by another 1% every 6 months. Most people genuinely don't notice a 1% change in their take-home pay, but over a decade, those automatic increases compound into a dramatically different retirement outcome. And stop waiting for the perfect moment to start taking this seriously. The perfect moment was 10 years ago. The second best moment is right now, today. before you finish watching this video and go back to your normal routine and forget you ever felt this urgency. Because here is what's really at stake. This is not about spreadsheets. This is not about financial optimization for its own sake. This is about whether the version of you that is 70 years old and tired has options or doesn't. It is about whether you get to choose how you spend your final decades or whether that choice gets made for you by necessity. It is about dignity. It is about freedom. It is about being able to say no to the things that drain you and yes to the things that matter. Your future self is sitting somewhere right now in a body that is older and a world that has kept moving, hoping that the person you are today made some decisions that gave them a real choice. Not a perfect retirement, not a beach house and unlimited travel budget, just options, just the ability to walk away from things that are wrong for you, just the ability to rest without financial terror sitting next to you on the couch. The math is terrifying, but the math is also on your side if you start now. Compound interest does not care about your excuses. It does not care that you meant to start earlier. It just works relentlessly in whatever direction you point it. Point it in the right direction today. Your future self is already counting on the decision you make right now.